I got a comment from Twitter. I like hearing what people have to say there too. And you can follow me at @HatchRichard on Twitter. James on Twitter writes, "Hey Richard, I hope you're well. I've really been enjoying your thoughts on the current season of Survivor and on the game in general. I'm a university lecturer, I believe the equivalent of a professor in the US, here at Edith Cowan University in Western Australia. I've recently given a couple of conference papers on various aspects of Survivor, and I'm in the process of writing these up for submission to journals. I was hoping if you'd have any time, interest in having a chat with me to help me bolster some aspects of my arguments. One paper is on the idea of the social contract between players. Given that you essentially helped write the first social contract, I'd be interested in your thoughts in terms of the significance of this and how it's changed over time. The other is on how various fan networks and developments such as podcasting have played a role in providing knowledge and experience for new players, allowing the game to evolve at an accelerated rate. If you're too busy or just plain don't feel like it, that's cool. I'd just be really interested in your thoughts as someone who is significant in the history of the show and perhaps of all else, a lover of the game. Be safe, James." So I wrote back to him and we'll talk. I hope that'll be fun to talk with him. Two things, right? One, the social contract between players. He's interested in how I think this has changed over time. So the idea of a contract, of the word contract, gives people legally and otherwise, it connotes, if you will, this idea that what you've agreed is something the other should expect from you. Right? That's a contract. I agree to this, you'll get that. You agree to that, and I'll get this. So in a social contract in Survivor, your expectation, or the ostensible expectation, is that when you are aligned, this contract is in place. But we all know that it really isn't. That's the irony, I guess. That's the strangeness, maybe even the excitement with respect to what Survivor is. In the real world, there are costs people bear for not fulfilling these types of social contracts, not treating someone else a particular way that they expect based on the way they treat you, etc. All of that has to go out the window, and that's what's missing, I think, in James's comment in Twitter. Although we use this term social contract and we're trying to refer to something that goes on within the game of Survivor, I can't really say definitively that it has changed over time in the show, because from the show's inception, the idea of social contracts, the way we think of them in real life, aren't similar to what they are within the game. And they shouldn't be within the rules and within the context of outwin, outlast, outplay. So in practice, has it taken much, much longer than I ever imagined for the majority of players to understand the dynamics, the difference in the dynamics between social contracts in real life and those labeled that way within the game? Yes. I never imagined that 20 years in, 40 seasons in, people would still be not just believing someone else, relying on what it is they thought they could expect from someone else, but even still, all these years later, being angry that some social contract in which they'd believed was undermined. It makes zero sense to me. It's amazing to me that that is still the case. But then to answer James's questions, I don't really think it's a change in the social contracts. I don't think it's a change in the way the game should be played well. I think it's just a wonderful kind of sociological example of how aware we are as humans, how capable some are or some aren't of playing the game well and of recognizing the differences between our interactions socially in the real world, our norms, and how our interactions can and should be adjusted to play the game well. It's a great question, and it's really interesting, I think, to look at why maybe social contracts have been the same all the way through, but people have taken this long to understand them. His second part is intriguing, too. He's talking about fan networks and developments like podcasting, and he's wondering if they've allowed the game to evolve at an accelerated rate. And I don't think he's going to expect this answer. But I say no. And I would not have said no were I asked to predict whether these things would impact the game in the early seasons. So here's why. Just as I was talking in Social Contract about our limits and about the surprise with which I still watch players play the game of Survivor poorly, I recognize now that this idea of me right now talking to you, making YouTube videos, expressing recaps of seasons and episodes, the numbers of people out there who say things like they are the best player and they're the... I've got to use his name even here. I mean, people like Russell Hantz who think, he deserved to win. His fans who just are so adamant he deserved to win. This is why I say no. The idea that there are people out there giving reasonable, rational, data-specific, calm information, explanations about what really is the game of Survivor, how it can be played well. And some of us, me in particular, really focused in my life and in the game and in communications in general on this concept, this idea that reality matters. That what is true is what matters most, or should be what matters most. Does not seem to be shared by a sufficient number of us humans that I think social media, even to the extent that it's ubiquitous now, has or is changing the game of Survivor. It's bizarre to me, the numbers of people, the amount of information out there that's available, and yet people show up on the beach to play Survivor and start crying and hugging and I love you and what? So my response that the podcasting and all these networks is changing, maybe even negatively impacting the game, I've realized I can really intentionally I got a great example for it. In the first season, I was the only person on the island who could catch fish. I've been spearfishing all my life here in Newport, Rhode Island, and I am competent at spearfishing, but I did not want to be the only person who fed people. That wasn't what kept me in the game. I knew that it would be helpful, maybe even more helpful, if I were to teach other players to spearfish. I took Greg, I took Sue Hawk, I took people out and carefully, slowly, with real honest intention, tried to teach them how to spearfish. It was an utter waste of time. And in fact, Sue became injured a couple of times in her hand trying, because it takes longer to understand the way fish move, how you encounter them, and when you should shoot, and the perspective that you need, and how different it is underwater from above water, etc., etc., etc. It's the same as this game of Survivor. I could give a course, and in fact, this isn't the only professor who has contacted me. Max Dawson, who he has his own podcast now, I think, with Corinne, or he did. He played Survivor for years. Prior to his applying to Survivor, he had me Skype into his college classes that he was teaching to talk about Survivor and its dynamics. So there are people out there who are really trying to understand the game. There's a host, Probst, who's watched and been involved in every one of the games. I still don't think those people get it. I think there's an innate ability. There is an intellectual capacity. There is an emotional willingness to be vulnerable. There are so many characteristics of what are required to play the game well, that it isn't sufficient for all of these people to be just sharing this, that, and the other thing about why they think this is how you should play or that's how you should play. I think, James, that the game is not changed as a result of social media. And I'm sure you didn't expect that answer. I think people, if anything, may go into the game more confident than they should be. And if in some way that affects the game, so be it. But even that is questionable, because human nature, even in season 1, many of them went in more confidently than they should have. I was perceived as arrogant by the people who cast me and everyone around me, other than the other players, because people don't understand what real arrogance is. Arrogance is an exaggerated sense of your capabilities. I won, so my sense of my capabilities wasn't exaggerated. Boom. Have a good day. 80% of you who are listening to these videos have not subscribed to my channel. Please subscribe. Just hit the subscription button and hit the notification button, and you'll be informed when I have another video up for you to listen to. After you've subscribed, comment. Comment positively, comment negatively. No holds barred. Just say what you're thinking. That's what will make our exchange even more valuable. As I'm able, I'll create new videos responsive to that commentary. So like away, or dislike, on that rare occasion you may feel the need to do so. But either way, thank you.